I never thought I'd be sharing this, but here goes. I'm Chloe Miller, 20, and I've always felt like the odd one out in my family. My older siblings, Sarah and Mark, were practically worshipped by our parents. Sarah was the academic superstar, Mark the star athlete, me. I just liked to paint. My parents, Richard and Elizabeth, always seemed distant, like I was just there. We had money, a big house, all that jazz, but it felt empty. I always had this gnawing feeling like I was missing something, like I didn't quite belong. And now, after all these years, I think I finally know why. You won't believe what they told me on my birthday. Instead of the birthday dinner I was expecting, Richard cleared his throat, looking anywhere but at me. Elizabeth sat stiffly beside him, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Chloe," Richard began, his voice oddly formal, "we need to tell you something, something difficult." My stomach dropped to my knees. I had a sudden, irrational thought that they were moving to another country and forgetting to take me. "You're not our biological daughter," Elizabeth blurted out, the words sounding rehearsed. A cold wave washed over me. "Not biological. What the hell did that even mean? We were compensated to raise you. An arrangement, and now that you're 20, our obligations are fulfilled." Richard slid a check across the polished table. The amount was insulting, barely enough to cover rent for a few months. "We expect you to be gone by tomorrow morning." My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. Gone, just like that? What? What are you talking about? Compensated? What kind of arrangement? Where did I come from? I stammered, the questions tumbling out of my mouth. Elizabeth sighed, the sound laced with impatience. "Really, Chloe, you're making a big deal out of nothing. It was a long time ago. The details aren't important. After everything we've done for you, providing you with a roof over your head, food." "This isn't about you, Chloe," Richard interrupted, his voice sharp. "You need to think about what's best for the family. We have a reputation to maintain." "But my whole life," I whispered, my hands trembling so badly I had to set my phone down. "Was this why I always felt like an outsider? Was this why they never really saw me? Didn't you love me at all?" The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Richard scoffed. "Love, don't be dramatic. We provided for you. That's more than many kids get." I stared at them, these people who were supposed to be my parents, and a sickening realization dawned. This wasn't a one-time thing. This coldness, this dismissal, this complete disregard for my feelings, it had been there all along. I just hadn't seen it for what it was. A deep, gaping wound tore open in my chest, but beneath the pain, a tiny spark of anger ignited. I tried to reason with them. A private conversation, I thought, would be best. Less messy. "Mom, Dad, please," I begged, meeting them in the living room after a sleepless night. "Can we just talk about everything?" Richard didn't even look up from his newspaper. "There's nothing to talk about, Chloe. We've said all that needs to be said. But don't I deserve some answers? Who are my real parents? Why did you do this?" My voice cracked. Elizabeth finally glanced up, her expression hardening. "Honestly, Chloe, why are you bringing this up now, after all these years? It's disruptive. We've given you a perfectly good life." "A perfectly good life," I repeated, incredulous. "Is that what you call it? Feeling like an unwanted guest in my own home?" My heart pounded like a drum against my ribs. "That never happened the way you're describing," Richard snapped, finally lowering his paper. "You were always a sensitive child, Chloe. Always exaggerating. Gaslighting. He was actually gaslighting me." "We're family," Elizabeth chimed in, her voice dripping with saccharin. "We should support each other, not dredge up the past." Guilt trip activated. "Support? You're kicking me out with a pittance. Where am I supposed to go?" My throat closed up, words trapped inside, threatening to choke me. "Everyone has problems, Chloe," Richard said dismissively. "You're not special. Get over it." False equivalence. He really had a bingo card of terrible parental responses. "We're doing this for you, Chloe," Elizabeth said, her tone shifting back to falsely concerned. "This is a chance for you to find yourself, to be independent." "By throwing me out on the street," I retorted, my voice rising. "That's your idea of helping me." My face burned with humiliation and anger. "Don't be ungrateful," Richard warned, his eyes narrowing. "We could have left you with nothing. We could have told you on your 18th birthday." The blatant callousness stunned me into silence. They weren't even trying to hide their disdain. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. My whole body felt like it was vibrating with suppressed rage and hurt. I don't understand, I stammered, the fight draining out of me. How could you be so cold? Elizabeth sighed dramatically. We did what we had to do. Now please, Chloe, we have a dinner party to prepare for. I stared at them, my so-called parents, their faces impassive, indifferent to the devastation they had wrought. They were closing ranks, protecting themselves. I was nothing to them. I turned and walked away, defeated. The spark of anger flickered, threatening to die. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was ungrateful. Maybe I didn't deserve any better, but a tiny voice in the back of my head whispered, no, this isn't right. This isn't how families treat each other. A week later, a text arrived from Sarah. Mom's throwing a little going-away brunch for you. Sunday at 11, don't be late. A little going-away brunch. As if I was moving to Europe for a semester abroad, not being evicted from my own life. I ignored it. More texts followed, each one a subtle jab disguised as concern. Mom's really put in the effort, Chloe. It would be a shame to disappoint her. Mark's flying in just for this. You know how much he cares. Why was I still putting up with this? Sunday morning arrived, bringing with it a tension headache that throbbed behind my eyes. My phone buzzed incessantly with reminders from Sarah. Finally, I caved. The brunch was exactly as I expected, meticulously arranged, sickeningly sweet and brimming with passive-aggressive energy. The dining room table was laden with pastries, fruit, and champagne flutes. Richard and Elizabeth beamed, radiating false cheer. Sarah and Mark were there too, looking uncomfortable but dutiful. "Chloe, darling, you made it," Elizabeth exclaimed, her voice a touch too loud. She enveloped me in a hug that felt suffocating. "We were so worried you wouldn't come." Richard clapped me on the back, his grip too firm. "Good to see you, kiddo. We want to send you off right." Mark offered a strained smile. "Hey, Chloe, long time no see. Heard you're branching out." I forced a smile. "Something like that." Sarah, ever the pragmatist, cut to the chase. "So, Chloe, have you found a place yet? Mom and Dad were saying." "Sarah, dear, let's not discuss practicalities," Elizabeth interrupted, shooting Sarah a warning glance. "This is a celebration. Remember all those wonderful birthday parties we threw for Chloe when she was little? All the ponies, the clowns." A flash of a memory, me, alone in my room, coloring while the rest of the family laughed with the party guests outside. Ponies and clowns I barely saw. The room seemed to shrink, the air growing thick and heavy. My stomach churned. "Remember that time you painted the dog blue, Chloe?" Richard chuckled, nudging me playfully. Elizabeth nearly had a heart attack. Everyone laughed except me. I just stared at my plate, feeling the familiar sting of humiliation. "We just want what's best for you, Chloe," Elizabeth said, her voice softening. "We always have." "Speaking of what's best," Richard chimed in, "we were thinking perhaps you could give us a list of contacts, friends, acquaintances, just in case you need anything." A list of contacts, my contacts. They wanted to control who I talked to, who I might confide in. My headache intensified, a vice tightening around my skull. "It's just a precaution, darling," Elizabeth added, her eyes pleading. "For your own good." I looked around the table at their expectant faces and a wave of nausea washed over me. I wanted peace. I really did, but not at the cost of my dignity. "Thank you for the brunch," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "but I have to go." "Go, but you just got here," Elizabeth protested, her smile faltering. "We haven't even had cake yet." "I have an appointment," I lied, pushing back my chair. "An appointment on a Sunday?" "What could be so important?" Richard challenged, his brow furrowed. "It's important to me," I said, meeting his gaze, "and I really need to go." I stood, ignoring their protests, and walked towards the door. "Chloe, don't be rude," Elizabeth called after me. I paused at the threshold, my hand on the doorknob. "I'm not feeling well," I said, my voice tight. "I don't want to get anyone sick." And then, without another word, I left. The door closed behind me with a soft click, a tiny act of rebellion in a lifetime of forced compliance. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Back in my tiny apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes, I felt even more lost than before. The brunch had been a grotesque parody of a family gathering, a stark reminder of everything I'd been missing. My phone buzzed. It was Alex, my best friend since kindergarten. We'd been inseparable, partners in crime, confidants. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey," I mumbled, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Hey yourself, how was the thing?" Alex asked, carefully avoiding the word brunch. "Awful," I admitted. "Just awful. Want to talk about it?" I hesitated again. Talking about my family always felt like airing dirty laundry, a betrayal of some unspoken code. "I don't know." "Chloe," Alex said gently, "we've been friends forever. You can tell me anything." I took a deep breath. "Okay, okay, can I come over?" Alex's apartment was a haven of mismatched furniture, overflowing bookshelves, and the comforting scent of lavender. She pulled me into a hug, and I finally allowed myself to cry. "Okay," she said, steering me towards the worn-out sofa. "Spill." I started slowly, hesitantly, minimizing the details. "It was just awkward, you know, family stuff." "Awkward how?" Alex prompted, her brow furrowed. They tried to be nice, I guess," I said, picking at a loose thread on the cushion. "But it felt so fake, like they were performing for an audience." Alex waited patiently, her eyes full of concern. Finally, the dam broke. I told her everything. The birthday bombshell, the eviction notice, the empty check, the cold indifference, the gaslighting, the brunch charade. The words poured out of me, a torrent of pain and confusion. "And then they wanted a list of my contacts," I finished, my voice cracking. Like I was some kind of security risk. There was a long silence. Alex stared at me, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Chloe," she said finally, her voice low, that's actually not normal family behavior." I flinched. "What do you mean?" "I mean your parents evicted you, after telling you you're not even their kid, and they acted like it was no big deal." Alex's voice rose with each question. "That's insane." "Well, they said they provided for me all these years," I mumbled, feeling a familiar wave of guilt wash over me. "They said I should be grateful." "Grateful for what?" "For raising you out of some obligation." "Chloe, you realize that's manipulative, right? They created this situation, and now they're making you feel bad for being upset about it." I looked down at my hands, twisting my fingers together. "I don't know, maybe I am overreacting." "No, you're not," Alex said firmly, grabbing my hands. "If anyone else treated you that way, a boss, a boyfriend, a stranger on the street, would you accept it?" I shook my head slowly. "No, of course not." "Exactly. You deserve to be treated with basic respect, Chloe. You deserve to know the truth about your past. You deserve to feel loved and supported, not like you're a burden." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like she was giving me permission to feel the anger and hurt I'd been suppressing for so long. "But they're my family," I whispered, the words sounding weak and hollow. "They're your biological family, maybe," Alex corrected. "But family is about more than just blood. It's about love, trust, and respect. And those people, they haven't shown you any of that." I thought about the empty house, the forced smiles, the constant feeling of being an outsider. I thought about the brunch, the thinly veiled insults, the blatant control. A slow dawning realization began to creep into my mind. It wasn't me. I wasn't the problem was them. "You're right," I said, my voice stronger now. "You're absolutely right." "What are you going to do?" Alex asked, her eyes full of hope. I looked at her, at my friend who had always been there for me, who saw me for who I truly was. I thought about the life I wanted, a life free from their control, a life where I could finally be myself. "I'm going to find out the truth," I said, a newfound determination hardening my voice. "I'm going to find out who I really am and why they did this to me, and I'm not going to let them get away with it anymore." A wave of relief washed over me, followed by a surge of anger. No more minimizing, no more guilt, no more silence. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I had to do. It was time to fight back. Days blurred. Packing, researching, the numbing repetition punctuated by Alex's unwavering support. My apartment was a disaster zone, boxes overflowing with a lifetime of unwanted belongings. I found an old photo album tucked away in the back of a closet. Pictures of Sarah's ballet recitals, Mark's football games, and almost nothing of me. A few awkward school photos, forced smiles that didn't reach my eyes. I slammed the album shut, a fresh wave of anger washing over me. The legal consultation was equally frustrating. The lawyer, a stern woman with a no-nonsense attitude, listened patiently to my story. "It's complicated," she said, tapping a pen against her notepad. Adoption laws are tricky, especially when there's money involved. Money, I asked, my heart sinking. What money? She shrugged. There's usually some sort of financial arrangement in these cases. Child support, inheritance, inheritance. The word echoed in my mind. Had my biological parents left something for me? Had Richard and Elizabeth kept it hidden all these years? The lawyer advised me to gather any documents I could find, anything that might shed light on the situation. Look for anything related to your birth, adoption, or any financial records that mention your name, she said. I knew it was a long shot. Richard and Elizabeth were meticulous about their privacy. They kept everything locked away, both literally and figuratively. But I had to try. That night I snuck back into the Millers' mansion while they were at some charity gala. The house felt different, colder, more hostile. I moved through the familiar rooms like a ghost, avoiding the security cameras, my heart pounding in my chest. I went straight to Richard's study, the epicenter of his power. The room was filled with expensive furniture, leather-bound books, and an overwhelming sense of self-importance. I started with the desk, rifling through the drawers, finding nothing but bills, receipts, and business correspondence. Frustration gnawed at me. Where would they hide something like that? Then I remembered the safe. Behind a large painting of Richard, there was a hidden wall safe, its combination known only to him and Elizabeth. I'd seen them open it once, years ago, a glimpse of gleaming metal and stacks of cash. I didn't know the combination, but I knew how to find it. Richard had a habit of writing down important passwords and combinations in his planner, disguised as dates or phone numbers. I found the planner tucked away in a drawer, and after what felt like an eternity, I found it. A seemingly random string of numbers, cleverly disguised as an anniversary date. My hands trembled as I entered the combination into the safe. The tumblers clicked and the door swung open. Inside there were stacks of documents, jewelry, and a thick wad of cash. I ignored the cash and started sifting through the documents. Birth certificates, property deeds, investment statements, and then I saw it. A thick manila envelope labeled Chloe Miller Trust. My breath hitched. Trust? What trust? I ripped open the envelope and pulled out the document. It was a legal agreement, establishing a trust fund in my name, funded by my biological parents. The document stated that the funds were to be released to me on my 20th birthday, managed by Richard and Elizabeth Miller until that time. My eyes scanned the document and my blood ran cold. There it was, in black and white, a substantial inheritance, enough to set me up for life. And Richard and Elizabeth had kept it from me. They had lied, cheated, and manipulated me for their own gain. But that wasn't the worst part. As I read further, I discovered something even more sinister. The trust fund had been systematically drained over the years. Large sums of money had been transferred to offshore accounts, disguised as management fees and administrative expenses. Richard and Elizabeth had been stealing from me, using my inheritance to fund their lavish lifestyle. A wave of dizziness washed over me. The room spun. I felt like I was going to be sick. How could they? How could they be so cruel, so greedy, so utterly devoid of any human decency? Something inside me snapped. The hurt, the confusion, the self-doubt, it all coalesced into a single, burning point of rage. My vision narrowed, the edges blurring. I felt a sensation of ice water flooding my veins, followed by an intense heat. My hands, which had been trembling, clenched into fists. My shoulders straightened. I stood taller, feeling a newfound strength surging through me. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, unwavering resolve. The years of suppressed anger, the lifetime of feeling like an outsider, the blatant betrayal, it all crystallized into a single, unshakable purpose. I would not let them get away with this. I grabbed the trust fund document, my fingers trembling, and carefully placed it into my bag. I closed the safe, spun the dial, and replaced the painting. I left the study, the house, the life I had known. Outside, the night air was cool and crisp. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the scent of freedom. I looked back at the mansion, its lights blazing like a beacon of deceit. A small, grim smile played on my lips. I knew what I had to do. This wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't about inheritance. It was about justice. It was about taking back my life. It was about exposing their lies and holding them accountable for their actions. I will expose them, everything. I will not be silenced. I am done being their victim. I am coming for them. The days following the discovery were a whirlwind of activity. With Alex's unwavering support, I started building my case. Screenshots of suspicious bank transfers, copies of the trust fund document, even old emails where Richard casually mentioned managing Chloe's affairs. I felt like a detective piecing together a complicated puzzle. I scheduled a meeting with the lawyer again, this time armed with evidence. Her eyes widened as she reviewed the documents. "This changes everything," she said, a hint of excitement in her voice. "This is solid. We can definitely pursue legal action." Next came the financial advisor. I needed to understand the extent of their embezzlement and how to recover the stolen funds. The advisor, a young woman named Emily, was appalled. "They've been systematically bleeding this account dry for years," she said, shaking her head. "It's blatant fraud." The hardest part was deciding how to confront them. I could file a lawsuit and let the legal system take its course, but that would take months, maybe years. And I knew Richard and Elizabeth would fight dirty. They would use their money and influence to try to discredit me, to silence me. Alex suggested going public. "Expose them," she said, her eyes blazing. "Let everyone see them for who they really are." It was a risky move, but it felt right. It was the only way to ensure they couldn't sweep it under the rug. I started crafting a statement, carefully choosing my words. I wanted to be factual, concise, and devastating. I practiced delivering it in front of the mirror, trying to keep my voice steady, my emotions in check. The anxiety was a constant companion. What if they denied everything? What if they turned my siblings against me? What if I failed? But beneath the anxiety, there was a growing sense of determination. I would not back down. I would not be intimidated. I would not let them win. The plan was simple, yet audacious. I would confront them at their home, in front of a lawyer and a select group of media representatives. I wanted to control the narrative, to prevent them from twisting the story to their advantage. I chose my outfit carefully, a simple black dress, professional but not ostentatious. I wanted to project strength and confidence, not wealth or vulnerability. I practiced deep breathing exercises, trying to calm my racing heart. Alex arrived, her arms laden with supplies, water bottles, tissues, and a small, worn-out teddy bear. "For luck," she said, handing it to me with a wink. "Are you sure about this, Chloe?" she asked, her voice softening. "It's not too late to change your mind." I looked at her, at my best friend, my rock, my family. "I have to do this, Alex," I said, my voice firm. "I have to." "Okay," she said, squeezing my hand. "Then let's do it." She reviewed the plan one last time, going over every detail, every contingency. She reminded me of my strengths, of my resilience, of my worth. "They're going to try to manipulate you," she warned. "They're going to try to make you feel guilty. Don't let them. Remember why you're doing this. Remember what they did to you." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Images flashed through my mind, their cold faces, their dismissive words, their blatant lies. "I remember," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Good," Alex said, her voice sharp. "Now go out there and show them what you're made of." As I approached the Miller mansion, my heart pounded in my chest. It loomed before me, a symbol of everything I had lost, everything I had been denied. But this time I wasn't approaching it as a victim. I was approaching it as a warrior. This was it. No turning back. It's time. The Miller mansion shimmered under the late afternoon sun, its manicured lawns and opulent facade a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I stood on the porch, my lawyer, Ms. Evans, beside me, a small group of reporters hovering behind. The air crackled with anticipation. This was it. The door swung open, revealing Elizabeth, her face etched with surprise. "Chloe, what is the meaning of this?" Her voice dripped with practiced condescension. Richard appeared behind her, his expression hardening as he took in the scene. "We're here to talk," I said, my voice steady, "about the trust fund." Elizabeth's eyes flickered nervously. "Trust fund? I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't play coy, mother," I said, the word tasting like poison on my tongue. I have the documents, I know everything. Richard stepped forward, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. Get off my property, Chloe. This is a private matter. It's a matter of fraud, Richard, Ms. Evans interjected, her voice sharp. And the media has a right to be here. Richard glared at Ms. Evans, then turned back to me, his voice softening slightly. Chloe, darling, let's not do this in public. Come inside, we can discuss this like civilized people. Those tactics don't work on me anymore, I said, my voice unwavering. This ends now. I'm not asking, I'm telling you. Elizabeth gasped, her hand flying to her chest. How dare you speak to your parents like that? Parents, I scoffed. You haven't been parents to me. You've been custodians, and very bad ones at that. We gave you a good life, Chloe, Richard roared, his face contorted with rage. We provided for you, clothed you, fed you. With my own money, I retorted, my voice rising. Money stolen from me, money that was meant to give me a future. That's a lie, Elizabeth shrieked, tears welling up in her eyes. We would never do such a thing. Really? I asked, pulling the trust fund document from my bag and holding it up for the reporters to see. Then explain this. Explain the offshore accounts, the fraudulent transfers, the years of systematic embezzlement. Richard's face paled. Elizabeth's jaw dropped. They stepped back, their carefully constructed facade crumbling before their eyes. This isn't about money, Chloe, Richard stammered, his voice losing its authority. It's about family, about loyalty. Loyalty? I laughed, the sound bitter and hollow. You want loyalty. You should have shown me some first. You should have told me the truth. You should have treated me like a human being, not a project. We did what we thought was best for you, Elizabeth wailed, her tears flowing freely now. We were protecting you. Protecting me? I repeated, incredulous. By stealing my inheritance, by lying to me my entire life, by kicking me out on my 20th birthday with a pittance and a pat on the back. Chloe, please, Richard pleaded, his voice cracking. Don't do this, you're ruining everything. This isn't about ruining anything, I said, my voice firm. It's about reclaiming what's mine. It's about exposing the truth. It's about holding you accountable for your actions. We're your family, Elizabeth sobbed. Don't you love us? I looked at them, at their desperate faces, and felt nothing. No love, no pity, no guilt. Only a cold, hard resolve. This isn't about love, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. It's about control, and you've lost it. I turned to the reporters, my voice clear and strong. My name is Chloe Miller, and these are Richard and Elizabeth Miller, the people who raised me. They are also the people who stole my inheritance, lied to me about my origins, and tried to erase me from their lives. I am here to tell my story, and I will not be silenced. I turned back to Richard and Elizabeth, my gaze unwavering. Consider this my resignation from the Miller family. Then I turned and walked away, Ms. Evans and the reporters following behind. I didn't look back. The weight of their lies, their manipulations, their control lifted from my shoulders. I was free. I had a new life to build. The flashbulbs popped, momentarily blinding. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a stark contrast to the eerie calm that had settled over me. I felt strangely detached, as if watching myself from a distance. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice, I was told later, had been unwavering. Richard and Elizabeth stood frozen, their faces masks of disbelief and fury. The reporters swarmed, firing questions, their voices a chaotic buzz. Evans expertly navigated the melee, guiding me towards the waiting car. That was intense, she said, her voice calm but impressed. You were incredible, Chloe. I managed a weak smile. I just said what needed to be said. As the car pulled away, I glanced back at the mansion. Richard stood on the porch, a solitary figure silhouetted against the fading light. His face was unreadable, but I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that my life would never be the same. Back in my apartment, the adrenaline began to wear off, leaving me shaky and exhausted. Alex was waiting, her face a mixture of concern and relief. She wrapped me in a tight hug. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. I sank onto the sofa, the teddy bear clutched in my hand. The tears came then, a flood of pent-up emotion. Alex held me close, letting me cry it out. Later, after a shower and a change of clothes, I sat with Alex, sipping tea, watching the news reports flicker across the screen. My story was everywhere. The headlines screamed of betrayal, greed, and family secrets. Richard and Elizabeth had issued a brief statement, denying all allegations and accusing me of being a disgruntled and unstable child. But the damage was done. The truth was out. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, heard their voices, relived the confrontation. The relief I had felt earlier was replaced by a gnawing anxiety. What would happen next? How would my siblings react? What would my life look like now? 6 weeks have passed since that day. The legal battle is ongoing, a slow and grinding process. Richard and Elizabeth are fighting back, hiring expensive lawyers and PR firms to try to salvage their reputation. The media frenzy has died down, but the story still lingers, a dark cloud hanging over the Miller family name. But amidst the chaos, something remarkable has happened. I've found peace. A fragile, tentative peace, but peace nonetheless. The trust fund is now under my control, thanks to a court order. I've hired Emily to manage the funds, and she's already working to recover the stolen assets. It's a slow process, but we're making progress. I've moved into a small but cozy apartment in a vibrant neighborhood. It's nothing like the Miller mansion, but it's mine. I've filled it with art supplies, books, and plants. It feels like a sanctuary, a place where I can finally be myself. I've enrolled in art school, something I've dreamed of doing for years. The classes are challenging, but I'm thriving. I'm surrounded by creative, passionate people who inspire me. I feel like I've finally found my tribe. Alex has been my constant support, my confidant, my best friend. Our relationship has deepened, evolving into something more. We're taking things slow, but I can see a future with her, a future filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. My siblings, Sarah and Mark, have been complicated. Sarah initially sided with our parents, accusing me of being selfish and destructive. But over time, she started to waver. She's seen the evidence, read the reports, and heard the stories from other people who have been hurt by Richard and Elizabeth. She started asking questions, challenging their version of events. I don't know if she'll ever fully understand, but I can sense a shift in her perspective. Mark, on the other hand, has remained steadfastly loyal to our parents. He refuses to believe that they could do anything wrong. He's accused me of being a liar, a gold digger, and a disgrace to the family. I've tried to reach out to him, but he won't listen. I've accepted that I may never have a relationship with him again. My extended family has been a mixed bag. Some have rallied around Richard and Elizabeth, condemning me for airing our dirty laundry in public. Others have reached out, offering support and sympathy. A few distant cousins have even shared their own stories of being mistreated by Richard and Elizabeth, confirming my long-held suspicions that their behavior wasn't limited to me. There are still days when I doubt myself, when I wonder if I did the right thing. The memories of my childhood, the constant feeling of being an outsider, the years of suppressed anger, still haunt me. I have nightmares, flashbacks, moments of overwhelming anxiety. But then I look around at my new life, at my art, at my friends, at Alex, and I know that I made the right choice. I am no longer living a lie. I am no longer allowing them to control me. I am finally free. I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about love, trust, and respect. And sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the most. I've learned that it's okay to walk away from toxic relationships, even if those relationships are with your own family. I've grown stronger, more resilient, and more self-assured. I've embraced my identity as a survivor, as someone who has overcome adversity and emerged stronger on the other side. I've found my voice, and I'm using it to advocate for others who have experienced similar situations. My current emotional state is complicated. I'm still healing, still processing the trauma of my childhood, but I'm also hopeful, optimistic, and excited about the future. I'm finally living a life that is authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling. I'm not completely healed, I know. There are still lingering issues to address. I want to ask you, the reader, how do you handle the guilt that comes with cutting off toxic family members, even when you know it's the right decision?